Alright, hello YouTube, what's going on? This is my new Airsoft channel, Link's Airsoft, and we're bringing you today a video of how to disassemble and clean in depth your A&K SVD Dragunov. Now this is the version 2, so there may be a few differences inside, including a reinforced sear and a few minor adjustments, so it really won't affect the disassembly process too much. Now for this video, since it's our first, cheers to that, but we're going to be going pretty in-depth with which parts need to be cleaned the most, because a lot of other videos sort of miss out on the key aspects of what needs to be cleaned. And, when it's coming to a gun like this, precision is everything. So, to get started, the first part that we're going to need to do to sit there and remove the dust cover here, you're going to sit there and flip this switch, this one right here. You're going to flip it down a little past 90 degrees. It should be in line with the handguard here. Now if you lift it up, dust cover comes right off. Alright, you can already see a few parts that are going to need to be cleaned fairly well, including the return spring, return assembly, and the main spring, including the bolts and piston. Those are a few key components. Now to remove the spring assemblies and all that, you're going to need to pull out your properly sized Allen key wrench here. You're going to prop your gun up, set the wrench in, and start to turn. This is going to take a while, so bear with me here. Alright, now that this first one's loose, set it aside in a place you will not lose it. As you can see, I have this cloth set aside. Going to put that down right there. Now I'm going to work on loosening the second screw. Now once these screws are removed, these spring assemblies, the spring assembly, which is this block right here with the portings on the side for the screws, that will become accessible along with all the springs and other good stuff inside there, So I'm working on removing the second spring right here. Screw, I mean, not spring. Alright, now it's getting a little bit wobbly, as you can see in the camera there. You're going to want to hold that down on the porting, and you'll hear a slight pop. Remove the second screw. Set down your Allen wrench aside so you know which one. Set it right next to those screws so that way you know which one closes and tightens them back up. Okay, now here you're going to put your thumb on the back of this. Push forward, up, and out towards the rear. And the gun just fell. Make sure to hold on so that does not happen to you while you're pulling that out. Pull the assembly out while holding the return spring and the main spring. Set that back down onto your cloth right here. Alright, now you can see the sear and other parts inside of here. You may want to oil up the sear a bit. Everything else underneath the trigger assembly, you don't really need to worry about that all too much. It's just a basic takedown and some more advanced aspects will be touched on for cleaning. Now you're going to want to pull the bolt, this blue anodized metal bolt, out. Notice which part is the head so that way you know which way to put it in. There's an O-ring, so you'll have to oil that too, Alright, you can pull the bolt back freely since there's no return spring. You can see the hop up. There are a few slots back in there that you will have to oil in order to maintain a smooth bolt pull there. Now grab your second Allen wrench. Your second Allen wrench key here. And there's a little, I'll show you real quick, there's a little tiny screw right there. You're going to have to loosen that to pull out the piston head. This one's fairly quick to take out. Also, set this one aside over here. Make sure not to lose that one. Set your gun down on a steady platform and pull the piston head out. You can also set that aside, which I'm going to set up here. I'm just going to move this Allen wrench tool over here. Okay, now that you have the majority of your parts pulled out, your bolt's free to move. I'm just going to set that down. Now the first part, get your lubricant out. Shake it up pretty good. While I'm shaking it, I'm going to go over a few things. These are some hops swabs, cotton swabs basically, on a little metal piece. And these are just regular cotton swabs. I mean, they're both fairly good in cleaning up your gun. Alright, now this is shaken up pretty good. I'm going to just do this so the camera can see it. You're going to spray a little bit on your swab right here. Set the WD-40 back down. Grab your piston head. It's just going to be fairly quick just to show. You're just going to want to sit there and slide it in and around, clean out the insides. get all that excess goop from your last cleaning out. That way you don't have too many issues. You can just sit there and quickly run over it with this. Set your swab back down. And take this paper towel and just sort of rub off the excess. Another important part that other people will miss is getting in and around the piston head. As you can see, my fingers are already getting some dirt just from picking it up off there. You can take that, swab it around. If you feel like you want to switch, I mean, you can always switch over to one of these regular cotton swabs. And sit there and clean out the very tip of the nozzle. Just make sure it's all fairly clean. I mean, you don't want anything sitting in there. The inside's pretty well cleaned. Set that back down. Now the bolt, the blue anodized bolt, there's a lot of dirt that gets picked up around that O-ring right there. So what you can always do is set this aside. Spray a little bit, not too much. You don't want to soak your thing. You don't want to drench it. Just basically rub all the way around. You'll see a ton of dirt's already coming off. I mean, stuff gets picked up like no tomorrow in here. Alright, the one thing I like about these swabs right here is you can sit there and creates a pretty tight fit inside the bolt. Good for cleaning. If you feel like you need to, you can apply some more oil to a side that doesn't have any oil on it. Slide that back in. Clean in and around until you don't see any more dirt, any more visible chunks of dirt. Especially just clean inside there. Now for the bolt head, clean that off. Set your swab down. Same as the piston head, just basically rub down the bolt. Make sure to keep a little bit of oil on the O-ring. That's always a good part to keep oiled. Now one of the biggest pieces, or should I say a couple of pieces here, you have your main spring. As you can see, slides right off, not an issue. You have this other little metal piece. You can always clean that out. It doesn't really do a whole ton. Just slides back onto the spring assembly. And you have your return spring and the return spring assembly. I already have it pretty well oiled from the last time I was cleaning it, which was about a month ago. 2 or 3 weeks ago. What you can do is just sit there and clean this off, because even the old oil, alright, you can see right there in the camera, all that goop that's been building up on there. You just wipe off all that old oil in excess. Clean off. You can take this piece off, set it aside. Make sure not to lose any of these pieces though, that would be very bad. Alright, you wipe off all the dirt. Now what you can do is sit there and spray a light mist onto both rods. Clean off both rods fairly even. You know, keep a little bit of oil. That's the whole point, is to keep it nice and even, smooth throughout. Now for the springs. This is where you might use the smaller cotton swabs a little bit more. And be generous with the oil. You can always wipe it off, but you can't sit there in place not having enough on it. So you just spray down the first spring. Roll it about. This typically works with both, maybe a little bit better for the bigger one because it's just that much bigger. You know, I already have some oil on here, but for all intents and purposes, you're going to put a ton of oil on there. Wipe it down, make sure it's completely dried from the inside. Take one of these little swabs. It's time consuming, alright, but it's sure worth keeping your gun clean. You can just take one of these, just basically rubbing it about. If you see any big buildups, which shouldn't happen if you're cleaning it pretty consistently. Set down the big spring here. You have your spring return. Just basically the same thing, it's just a little bit smaller though, not a big issue. Just roll it about. Take one of your cotton swabs here. Fits perfect with most, you know, just cotton swabs you'll buy anywhere. Look at that, all that dirt is just from this single spring return. Return spring, you know. Cleaned it out. Set aside all your dirty ones too. Another good thing to have is your garbage can. Toss all your dirty stuff aside. Make sure to wipe your hands off so you don't get bad oil on anything else. Alright, now another thing we're going to get into here is cleaning out this inside rail. I mean, your bolt, this will determine how smooth your bolt pull is, of course, with the cleanliness of your springs. This right here is a big thing. If you don't have this rail in here cleaned out very good, or even mildly good, it's going to be hard to pull back this bolt right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit there and pull out 2 of these, set them side by side to get some of that oil. You know, you can even stack 3 of them if you want, side by side. Put it right against that nozzle there of the WD-40. Spray the WD-40 on set the other two aside there. Take the ends with the oil, rub down the insides. It's real simple. I mean, you'd be surprised how much stuff comes up. Look at that, just from one. You can see that just from one single swab. Clean out all the moving parts and rails inside of here. Make sure there's no excess buildup. Move on to your second swab. Clean that out. Pull back your bolt. Swab the inside. As you can probably see that the inside's there. And with our last swab, of course, you can always use more than 3. There's no set rule saying you have to use 3 of them. It's probably best to get it to the point where you can run one of these through here and not get any dirt on it. That's pretty much that. And back in here, right behind the hop-up, also catches a lot of dirt because that's right where the mag feeds in. The mag will feed right into that base there. Gets a ton of dirt. Swab off the top of the hop-up. There's also another O-ring up at the top of the hop-up right there. If I pull that forward, you can see that O-ring. Set the gun down. Spray the WD-40 from time to time. This is an older can, so it may require some more shaking. Spray some WD-40 on here, and even run it across this O-ring up by the hop-up. It'll ensure that stays clean. You won't have to replace it as much. Always swab underneath where the spring assemblies are, where that bolt edges on there. Alright, this is another one right here. Clean it out with just a regular swab, Smojo swab here. Rub it in and about. Alright, that was pretty quick. Slide it back on. Remember, this silver piece goes right on the lower spring guide. Now that you have your bigger spring cleaned off, set it back in there. Get your return spring set up on here. Slide that right back on. Set it up. Okay. Now that you basically got these parts right here cleaned up, align the little indentation on your piston here. Line it up so that it'll generally slide into the action fairly good. You can always sit there and look in a bit closer into that little hole right there where that small screw goes. Make sure it's lined up. Now, remember how we had set these aside so we wouldn't lose them. You know where they're at. Find the proper Allen wrench for it. Set it back up. Screw it in. Alright, that one tightens pretty quickly. Set this piece aside, the Allen wrench there. Alright, now for the bolt itself. Make sure the head's all clean. If you missed anything, run back through real quick. Clean it off. Make sure the O-ring's well cleaned. Simple as this. You just slide it back in there. It doesn't matter which way the porting goes on either side. Just slide it in there. It doesn't matter. Now grab your spring assembly, spring guide, all that. Make sure it's all together, including that silver ring at the base. Slide that back in. Pretty simple. Make sure it all goes in. Okay, now there's going to be a bit difficulty, bit of resistance. You basically slide it in. Hear the first click, second click. Alright, it's ready to go. Just drop your little screws in there into place. Usually one at a time. I mean, it doesn't really matter a whole ton. Whichever is more comfortable to you. Always tighten your screws down fairly slowly. You don't want to strip any of these parts. I'm not going to say they're impossible to find, but, I mean, they're not the easiest to find anywhere. No point spending extra money on something you can always sit there and keep safe at the time being. Alright, first one tightens down pretty quickly. Get your second screw, slide it in, pop it in there, tighten this one down too. That's pretty much all you have to do for oiling. I mean, just make sure you oil down the bolt, all those moving pieces there. Trigger assembly, that's a bit more difficult to do, and truth is, you don't really need to sit there and oil it as much. I mean, it still functions the same. Not too much resistance on the trigger there. Alright, now that you have your spring assembly all set up, your bolt assembly set up for further up, grab your dust cover, slide it in, and here I'll just show you real quick. For those of you who are new to this gun, there are a few indentations up there that will let you slide your dust cover right in, real easy. Slide it in, it should click in. And now just to recap, basically take your little your switch back here. It's right behind the fire selector switch. It's either on safe right here, safe's up top. or ready to fire, you know. Slide this from where it was back here, slide it up, you'll hear the click, test it, it's in there tight, it's good to go. Now you may be wondering for like external, to keep it good, to keep the externals good, what I have here are some like hops, so like just basically gun cleaning kits right here, these little packets. You can crack one of these things open, pull the packet out, make sure not to like rub it in your eyes or anything crazy, you know. Pull it out, set it on here. And what I usually do is, since I've put a custom look on here, I basically sanded it down to give an older, more worn look. What I'm having issues with, the rest of the gun's made out of pretty good aluminum. I'm not sure what metal this is for the mag itself. It is metal, of course, but it's starting to take on some rusting issues here. So what I do from time to time is get some cloths, rub it down. You'll see it's starting to get a little bit wet from the cloth there. Rub down the base of it, rub down the back, all the parts on the mag here. Rub it down, take your swab, drop it, or you can set it aside, doesn't matter. Basically just rub down your mag, hold it from a safe spot where you won't get any of the oil on your fingers. And just rub it down, just make sure to clean it off so you don't build up any rust. I mean, no one likes any rust building up on there. Make sure you get all the spots, you don't want any excess oil building up in between the cracks or anything. Wipe it down. It should look a little bit more shiny at the end. That's the whole purpose of it. It's gun oil, makes it clean, makes it look a bit shiny, spiffy. You know, okay, you got it rubbed down. It'll also work up here. I mean, it's not as big of an issue up on your receiver here. I mean, you got a polymer foregrip, polymer stock, and the rest is a metal rail, you know. That's pretty much it for that. And here you go, you've got your gun, you can toss your mag in there. It's complete. That's basically the most basic way to sit there and take it apart, clean it, short of taking the actual trigger assembly out, which I may do in another video. As for now though, for most basic field stripping, that's all you need. Just got to take out that bolt, piston, spring guides, the works. And again, just to recap on what I used WD-40, works fairly decent. Most of the time I'll be using a little orange tube of Hops gun oil. Works on real firearms and Airsoft alike. Works very good. It's kept my gun running for over like 2 years now. That's about it. This is the Lynx Airsoft production, our first video for our channel, so hope you enjoy.